So, seeing this episode's title at first might have been kind of confusing too because the two different parts of it sort of contradict each other. Like, what do you mean when good things happen to me and I'm satisfied with my life? It leads to a reality where it actually just makes me really anxious and like I'm almost on edge. And I myself am kind of having a hard time understanding it and comprehending it. So, I thought today it would be good to just sit down and kind of reflect on it and maybe figure out where this may be coming from in the first place. And to be honest with you, I have hardly anything written down for this episode. My episodes are never scripted, but I always have a little something written down just for my main points and main things that I don't want to forget about. And obviously, it's good to have those things written down to kind of guide me so that the episode isn't all over the place. But I also find at the same time, when I do that, it kind of restricts myself and I feel like I can't talk as openly because I feel like there's this strict structure that I have to follow. So, anyways, today I'm kind of just coming on here and winging it because then I think it'll be more genuine and it'll flow better. But let's just hope that it's not all over the place because of that. So let's get started. So as my mic, I feel like one of those kids on Disney Channel who whirls their wand around. Okay, so just to clarify what I might mean by this, because it's probably kind of confusing, but basically, I've been kind of on this high recently where my life is going so well. I'm so happy and I'm so grateful for my social life and just everything that I have around me. And it almost feels too good to be true. And I'm kind of viewing it as the honeymoon stage of recovery because I had an eating disorder last year and I started recovery in the last few months of the year. So I'm kind of at the point where I've started to gain my life back and gain my energy back, and I just feel so happy and I'm just filled with this energy that I'm not used to. And it almost feels so good that it feels wrong. It makes me anxious. It's keeping me on edge because it almost feels like something bad is about to happen to make up for all the good that I've been experiencing. And it's been kind of irritating because I haven't been able to fully appreciate and enjoy the peacefulness and the good because I'm worried that something bad is going to come. The first thing that comes to mind when I think about what might be at the root of this is my extreme superstitious personality. I think a lot of this is related to my OCD. I was diagnosed with OCD in the fall, kind of at the same time as when I started recovery. And I already had suspicions ahead of time, but actually getting diagnosed with it and having it be recognized was really beneficial because I finally felt validated. And when it's confirmed and you have a name for it, then you're actually able to find the right ways to help yourself. But when you don't know for sure what it is, it's really hard to get the help that you need and find ways to improve your situation. And it also just made me feel understood and not like I was crazy and not like I was imagining all of it. So, anyways, a lot of my OCD is linked to the idea of like contamination, but at the same time, I do experience feeling like I have to do something a certain amount of times or something doesn't feel right or things have to be done an exact way. And along with that, I get really superstitious. I tend to be someone who believes in signs a lot, good and bad. So sometimes I'll see something and I feel like it's a good sign and it brings me a lot of peace and a lot of joy. And I think that kind of comes from something different. I think it's because I am personally religious. So sometimes when I see a good sign, I feel like it's coming from the higher power. So it brings me a lot of peace. But the opposite happens when I feel like something is a bad sign. Whether I see a number that feels like it's wrong. And there's the old myth where if you break a mirror, it's bad luck, or you see a black cat, it's bad luck. And I think every person has some kind of level of superstition because it's kind of built into our society. But when you have OCD, it can be worsened. Because I kind of describe OCD as a flame that ignites. It starts off as a little spark. The OCD is basically this little spark, and then the compulsion comes. The compulsion starts to create a bit of a flame. And if you ignore it, it starts to go out. But if you feed into it, it just makes the fire bigger and bigger. Bear with me with all the metaphors, but it really is a good way of describing it. It's like when you feed into the compulsion and you repeat these things, it makes it worse. So it's kind of like that with the superstition. If you look at certain numbers in a bad light, for instance, and you continue to do that over and over, it's just going to get worse over time. But whether it's OCD or you just have some superstitious beliefs or some superstitious habits or personality traits, just try one time, try to avoid doing it. Don't feed into the compulsion, don't feed into the belief because that's just going to create more anxiety. Try to avoid it once, and then you will see it's going to diminish the anxiety so much. It's going to be so much easier to not do it the next time, and then so on. But yeah, I would say just try to lean into something that's going to give you peace, whether it's religious beliefs or it's just an activity that calms you down. Just try to lean into something. Try to lean into some kind of belief, some kind of personal belief, some kind of personal ideology that's going to calm you down. Find somewhere else to put the anxieties. Don't keep it all inside of you. Don't keep it all on you because it's going to get so overwhelming. So, the reason I'm bringing up the superstition is because it almost feels like things have been so good that I'm waiting for a light switch to just go off and I'm waiting for something bad to happen. It's honestly really scary. Like I said earlier, I feel like I can't fully enjoy the good and just be peaceful and calm with it because I'm just worried about whether or not something bad is going to follow it. I think another reason I'm also experiencing this is it's not that my life isn't good. Like, I'm not going to deny the fact that I'm so satisfied with my relationships and my friendships and my circle and my work life and my school life and just everything I get to experience. I'm so happy about it at the moment. However, I think it almost feels too good to be true because I'm comparing my current situation, which is, I'd say, a pretty typical life. I'm comparing it to what I was feeling during the ED when I was in such a dark place. And obviously, when I start to compare and contrast those two situations, this situation is going to feel like almost a dream come true, like it's too good to be true. Because what was happening to me before was a terrible experience. It was like the complete opposite. I felt isolated. I wasn't happy with myself. I didn't have much love for myself. I had basically no social life. So if you look at it, it basically has completely switched over. And even before the ED, I would still struggle sometimes. Like, I genuinely don't remember the last time I have felt this good. And I'm so extremely grateful that I've gotten to this point, but it makes me feel like I'm almost waiting for something bad to happen because it always feels like it's been that. The idea that something bad is bound to happen kind of reminds me of my emetophobia. If you didn't know, emetophobia is basically the phobia of throwing up, and it's not just, oh, I don't like doing that. There's so much that goes into it, and it can control so many different aspects of your life, and you don't really understand it unless you've experienced it yourself or you really start to look into psychologically why it would be so debilitating and frustrating. And the metaphobia and the OCD kind of play hand in hand. It's kind of the chicken and the egg where I don't know which one came first because for as long as I can remember, I've experienced both of them. And yes, as I've gotten older, the OCD has kind of worsened and presented itself in different aspects of my life. But since a young age, I have been very much a people pleaser and always wanting to please. I've always hated conflict. I've always hated negativity. And I think that's kind of why I was always such a quiet kid because I was always scared of saying the wrong thing. I felt like I had to say either the perfect thing or do the perfect thing or not do anything at all. Yeah, so they kind of play hand in hand. And with emetophobia, it kind of simulates OCD habits. Because, like the superstition, you get superstitious about emetophobia. If I see a video online of someone talking about being sick or just talking about an experience, I feel like it's now going to happen to me because I've seen that video. Or even if I just heard someone talking about it, it almost feels like I'm getting the negative energy and it's going to happen to me. And these two things are similar because it feels like I'm bound to get sick because it's been so long since I have. This is kind of related to what I was talking about earlier, but an additional thing that I think plays into this feeling of unsettledness is kind of the unfamiliar feeling. I love sticking to what I'm comfortable with and what I like to do, and it's kind of hard for me to go out of my comfort zone. Sometimes I've been trying to do it a little more recently, but I know what I like, I know what I enjoy, and I really stick to that stuff. So when something is a little unfamiliar or something that I'm not used to, I try to avoid it. And if I can't avoid it, it makes me really anxious. So there's so much good going on in my life, and it almost feels unfamiliar because I haven't always been this way. Like I said earlier, before the ED, there were still struggles. I grew up with anxiety and OCD and the emetophobia, and I kind of just took over my life in a way I couldn't even comprehend at such a young age. Now, when I look back on the habits that I had and the personality traits that I had and still have now, it makes a lot of sense and they're all connected. Anyway, so it just feels so unfamiliar for a handful of reasons, but especially because I'm kind of learning to just trust in what's meant to happen will happen and kind of just go along throughout my life and accept the things that come to me. I've really just been trying to lean into my faith because it gives me a lot of peace. And I feel like I'm leaning in it and trusting in it more than I ever have before. So there are just so many unfamiliar things going on, and it's definitely taking a bit of adjustment for me because I'm just not used to it. Another thing that I want to add is I think there's a deep, deep part of me that almost feels undeserving of the happiness. Sometimes it's really hard to put a finger on where this is really coming from in the first place because I grew up surrounded by love. I grew up surrounded with such loving parents and in just a really good, safe, and healthy household. So sometimes I think that maybe came up a little later on. Like when I was maybe 11, I think I started experiencing a lot of bullying. And when I went into high school, I didn't really have very many friends. I didn't really click with very many people, and I just felt alone and I felt like no one really liked me. And I think I just experienced some mistreatment and it just made me feel like I wasn't deserving of the happiness that I now experience. And even if it's not something that I consciously think about, it's still underlying there. There are things that I dealt with a lot growing up that still stick with me now, even if I don't realize it. Sometimes I think maybe it's also connected to the relationship that I had when I was 16. It's the only ever relationship I've ever had, and it was toxic. He didn't treat me well, and it took a lot of time to finally heal from it. And because I haven't experienced something since then, and also that was the only experience I had, I didn't experience anything prior to that. It felt like I was deserving of that, and it felt like I was deserving and meant to not experience good things. I don't know. I find psychology really interesting. Like sometimes I just sit down and think about my own situation and what maybe plays into those feelings or those thoughts. And there's something so satisfying about connecting the dots and finally starting to understand yourself. But really, at the root of it all, I think it really just is because I'm not used to the good and I'm not used to the stability. And I'm not saying that I haven't had an amazing life, but it's always been the type of thing where things could look like they're going so well on the surface, but I'd be dealing with something internal that would just sabotage the things going on around me and in my life in general. The internal issues would basically reflect outward. But yeah, I'm really just trying to make peace with it and kind of move past the superstitious views on it. Like, just because things are good now doesn't mean I'm not deserving. It's just something that I'm not necessarily used to, and it doesn't mean that something bad is coming. I just need to think about the fact that there's no rationality in that. I also just want to add, I think with superstition as well, a lot of it has to do with your mindset. I really do believe that if you start the day off thinking this is going to be a bad day, you're going to have a bad day. I feel like sometimes one thing that isn't great will happen early on in the day, and then I just convince myself and I become superstitious in the way where I think that the whole day is going to be bad. And then I'm just going to have like bad luck for the day, basically. But a lot of it has to do with your mindset and what you tell yourself. I find this really similar to the way that you talk to yourself in the mirror. If you look at yourself in the mirror and you talk negatively, you talk down on yourself, you say that you're ugly and you don't like how you look, you're going to start to believe those things. And it's going to be so hard to get past them because every time you look in the mirror, you're just going to instinctively see that and think that. But if you start to really look at yourself in the mirror and say good things about yourself, even if you don't believe them yet, you look in the mirror and you say good things about yourself, you're eventually going to start to love those parts of you and accept yourself for who you are, and you're going to start to believe it in reality. It's not going to be fake anymore. So I kind of find there's a lot of similarity between that and perspective about your life in general. Wake up with a good mindset, tell yourself it's going to be a good day. Just do whatever you have to do to have a good start to your day, and that's really going to set you up for the rest of your day. I kind of just made this with the purpose of self reflection, and also maybe someone is experiencing something similar and it feels good to hear someone say it out loud and talk about your own thoughts that you've been having. I hope that I was able to help in one way or another, and just know you are so deserving of good and you're so deserving of love. And in today's age, having a little bit of superstition is normal and is okay, but try not to let it control you and sabotage your happiness and your peace. Thank you so much for listening. I love you more than you know, and I'll see you next week.